What's up, girlfriends? Welcome to Girlfriendtherapy podcast, our year of conversations. You guys, if you've been joining us or tuning into any of the past 43 conversations I think we've had
Wow.
thus far,
Wow. That's awesome.
which only tells me that this year is flying, but we've had some amazing women joining me on this podcast. And our guest today is no different, Miss Stephanie Kirkland. She is an amazing, beautiful woman. You guys will get to experience her, and I'm looking forward to it. Stephanie is a speaker. She's a corporate trainer, an instructor, an identity-based leadership coach. She's a leadership consultant, a DEI strategist. She's an author and a woman's leadership expert. She's also the founder and CEO of Identity Dynamics, LLC. And Stephanie has over 15 years experience in personal and professional leadership development and training. She's passionate about seeing people unlock their potential for personal and professional success. And today we're going to be talking about identity, specifically identity as it pertains to Black women showing up and how we show up in corporate America. And I love the fact that this is a part of your dissertation, so it gives you a chance to kind of talk through it as well. So I'm excited.
Yes, yes. It gives me a chance to reherse before the
Exactly.
debut.
Oh my gosh, exactly. So Stephanie, I'm going to kick it over to you and
Okay.
let you, jump into conversation, and we'll see where it goes.
Yes, well, I think it's just very interesting. I've been doing a lot of trainings and so forth recently, even around this topic, and how people are sharing with me their experiences in corporate spaces and how they feel different. Some of
Yeah,
the narratives that keep popping up in their space with regards to who they are, their identity as unique individuals, and how they were leaning into it. Well, what's really going on? Because they're
right.
fighting the assimilation, but at the same time, they want to stand up and be who it is that they are called to be, but they still get the pushback. And so, as I was working on my dissertation, I did my first part, which was interviewing successful African American women
Oh
in
wow.
dominant culture organizations. And as you know, my thing is identity, and I believe
Exactly.
identity is the beginning of success. I believe we cannot be successful without understanding who we are and how we show
Yeah.
up and what all of those pieces mean to who we are as unique people.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I want to step into this space with regards to how we're showing up and what that looks like, because we know the statistics. I mean, we're not in those C suites, those executive suites. We're extremely low. I mean, under 2% of us are
Yeah.
in these high spaces. And so I went after some women who were in those spaces, those executive spaces, those C-suite spaces, and I asked them,
Wow.
with regards to who you are and how you show up, what made you successful? And guess what they said?
Being themselves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a sense of self, knowing
Yeah.
who they are, knowing what they believe, knowing their beliefs and values, and standing in their truth,
Yeah.
irregardless of the consequence. That's the key,
Mm.
right?
And I'm sure you're going to talk more about that because that is the key.
That is the key, right?
Yeah.
Because if I know who I am and I know that my identity is my success and I can't move away from her, I like to call her, right? I
Right.
can't move away from her. I must be her in order for me to see the things that I need to see in my spaces. Then how do I support that? And so
Exactly.
everything centered around a sense of self, whether it was faith, whether it was their personal identity, whether it was their professional identity, whether it was their social or relational activities, everything
Right.
centered around some aspect of their sense of self. And so I was like, okay, I mean, that is what I knew because, like you said earlier, I've been doing this work for 15 years.
Right.
And I had a program, and I still do. It's called In Pursuit of Me.
Mhm.
So I leaned into that assessment of empowering the everyday woman into discovering herself so that she can walk in purpose.
Exactly. And
Because I believe that.
if I can add, I think one, the
Please.
topic is so timely because I myself am, hoping to move out of this corporate construct that I've been in for the past 30 years almost.
Okay.
And I'm like, I used to always say that I only feel like I'm bringing like 7% of myself here.
Mm, mm,
And I used to say it's exhausting. It's
yes.
exhausting to not be able to just work and operate in your full self.
Yeah.
And, as I prepare to kind of shift and change careers, I'm starting to really kind of do the assessment, like, okay, what is it that I wasn't bringing and why was I not bringing it,
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the assessment I'm doing right now, which is why I feel like this conversation is so timely. And I have my notepad here. I'm going to be taking notes. And that's a cue for some other women that might be listening to this. This is a great time to start grabbing your notepad if you don't already have it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something that we all, no matter what level in your career, I think the earlier you can identify it, the more, enjoyment you might get out of your career,
Yes.
as opposed to just fighting yourself and wrestling with yourself internally for
Yeah.
20 plus years, in this corporate space. So yeah, this is very, very timely.
Yes. And so that was my premise and that conversation, because every woman that I've come across who is a current or emerging leader looking to advance, they had the same narrative that you did.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not able to bring all of me to the space. I mean, the study just came out from Lean In and McKinsey about the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
The majority of women of color are leaving. They're leaving and starting their own.
Yeah.
In order to do what it is that they need to do or be who they need to be in the space that they need to be in.
You have
And
to send me that article. I didn't know that I knew that
they did
there
a
were,
study. It's huge.
yeah. And so they found that the majority of women that's leaving the workforce are African, or is it African American women or just women of color?
Women of color, predominantly African American women.
Wow. Yeah, I
And they're
can't wait to
calling
read
it
that.
that. Yeah, it's called the
Wow.
Great Resignation.
Wow. Very,
Mhm.
very, yeah. I have to read that. This is like I'm right there. I'm right there.
Yes.
So,
And so my premise was, because a lot of times when you do your doctoral work, they want you to go to a site or they
mhm.
want you to go to a particular facility. And my thing was, all of the women that I've been speaking through are across dynamics, whether it's nonprofit, corporate,
Right.
whether it's a doctor's office. It did not matter. We are all having the same conversation.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
my premise was, well, I just want to talk to African American women, current and emerging, and how do I begin to support them? And a lot of times, we are looking to the organization to change.
Right.
But the premise of my context of my doctorate is, what if it never does?
Yeah.
So how do I support the women in their spaces if it never changes?
Right.
If they never get D&I wide? If it's never successful, if people don't shift,
Right.
how can I support these women in being successful in the space that they've decided to be a part of?
Right.
And so I took the narratives from the women who were successful in those spaces, and I created a curriculum around developing a sense of self. And so now I'm at the part where I'm using this curriculum and I'm training from it. And so I'm getting ready to do the writing around that curriculum to support current and emerging leaders.
I don't know if it's because I'm in that space, but I feel like this is one of the most important conversations that I could be having right now.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, when we talk about, identity, I was like, there's so many places you can go. And then when you got, more specific, like, no, this is what I'm doing my dissertation. It's like, this is perfect. One of the other things that I realized even for myself is the pressure of, I think, the stereotype of what a Black professional woman is.
Yes.
And then I think you mentioned a little bit about like the code switching. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of the things which is so powerful in the research, and it shows that African American women are considered across the board, according to research, non-prototypical.
Now, what does that mean?
Non-prototypical means we do not fit in the prototypical narratives that are ushered or that are shown up within corporate or any organizational space. So for us to try to fit in because we think something is wrong with us really goes against research, Kwanza, because why?
Wow.
Because we are non-prototypical. We don't fit. We will not fit.
Right.
So that goes back to identity. Are you going to own it?
Wow.
Are you going to be who you are because those narratives and spaces were not created for your greatness?
Yeah. It's crazy because as you're talking, my career is like, you know how they say your life is flashing. My career is literally flashing in front of my eyes. And I think about so many scenarios where, I'm kind of questioning myself. It's like, okay. And I never forget, I was at work one day and I was in the restroom and I was washing my hands and I was like in deep thought. And, this other African-American woman came in and I just looked over at her. I was like, do you ever get tired of just like, I didn't even know her, but I was just in this space. And here was another Black woman that looked like me. And I was like, do you ever get tired of like, of trying not to fit into this box that they want to put you in? Correct. And I was like, and I just don't want to be labeled what did I say? I didn't want to be labeled the angry Black woman. And she was like, why do you care if they label you that? And I was like,
and that was a good question,
that
right?
was a great question.
It was a great question because this is important. Because we are non-prototypical, the prototype of a woman in corporate space is a white middle-class woman.
Right.
And there are attributes and ways of being and acting that are contributed based on research. And I'm saying research a lot because I think we need to hear both sides. We already know the norm. Exactly. So I'd like to kind of bring that research piece to confirm for some of your audience, okay, it's not me. Okay, that makes sense. It's across the board, right? And because that norm or that perspective of the professional woman is centered around the white woman and we are considered non-prototypical, what happens is when we don't fit into the identity of the white woman and how she shows up in spaces, then what happens is societal norms becomes our describer. So things like the Mamie, the one who takes care of everybody. We done seen her.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? The angry Black woman, right? They got a new one now, girl, called the Bee. And let's finish them letters. Yes.
Really?
All social narratives that have been given to us. Why? This is important because we are non-prototypical. And because they don't understand unconscious bias and that they can't fit us into that narrative, then they lean towards societal norms. That's why culture is so important. That's why what we put on TV is so important. That's why how we engage and how we show up in different spaces is so important. Because it is creating a societal narrative that is shaping how people use information to describe who we are because we don't fit the prototypical norm.
Which is so powerful. I mean, because when you think about it, like you said, that's why representation is important and why what we see and what's the depictions of us in the media and all that stuff is so important is because people are, I think brands and businesses are expecting to get that.
Yes.
And then when they get us, they don't know what to do with us, right?
Correct. Yes.
And so then anytime so do you think, and I'm all over the place because this is so good, but do you think that like the idea of Black girl magic and a strong Black woman, do you think those kind of tropes help or hurt us? Or what are your thoughts about that?
They help. I
think they help. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I think they help us. I'm gonna say that again. It helps us because now we have narratives. We have things to look at. We have things that reflect how we feel on the inside. They are permission givers, right? It's giving us permission to shine and to be great because we see other women shine and be great and look luscious and look delicious when they get their rewards and they shimmy. You know what I'm saying? It makes us so proud because they are us.
Exactly.
And they don't have nothing we don't have. Come on.
I love this so much. I remember, so of course, going natural and working in corporate America, that was a whole thing.
Yes.
But I never forget several years ago, my company, we have like our annual holiday party. And, this particular day, I kind of didn't want to go, but I was like in leadership. So it's, kind of important that you're there.
Right.
And so I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to go. I said, I want a pair of really fabulous shoes. And I dressed I had on a leather, this leather jacket and this black dress. It was just and I had my hair out.
Okay.
And actually I had it pinned up, and I had the front like in a puff. And this is when I was a loose natural.
Right.
And I was very intentional about, I just want to show up as me. I want to show up in my creative self. I had these really cute pair of heels on that had like cartoon characters on. It was just a look. but I was really intentional about showing up the way that I felt, like showing up myself. I
Yes.
never forget, we did it at like this, this restaurant, and they had, reserved the entire restaurant. So they had the waiting staff there to, help us throughout the night. And I never forget when I came in. Now, I was probably one of three Black women in leadership, or
Okay.
not even leadership, just in some level of leadership.
Okay.
And the other two Black women, one was natural, but she wore a wig to the party.
Okay.
The other girl, had her hair just pressed and curled. And so here I come in with this afro, but I felt 1,000,000% myself. I felt so more myself that evening than I had, because I'm always kind of showing up wearing a mask.
Okay.
And so I never forget, I come in and the waiting staff is around, and there was a young Black girl. So as soon as I came in, she was a part of the wait staff, and I seen her eyes light up.
Right.
And I just kind of smiled and, kind of went in and I sat down. So unbeknownst to me, this particular night, I actually won our corporate highest award.
Oh, wow.
Had no idea. So I'm sitting at the table, and, they're calling, they're announcing this award. This award goes, this is the highest corporate award, and it goes to, and they're kind of describing the person that it goes to. And I'm like, I'm not paying it any attention because I'm thinking it's not me.
Right.
And I hear them call my name. And I could have been on the Academy Awards the way I was like, and everybody's like clapping, and I'm just like in a haze, and I'm just making my way up to the stage, and I grab the award, and I don't even know if I say anything. But when I'm coming down, when I tell you that young Black girl was clapping for me so hard, even think about it now, it just brings tears to my eyes, because it's one of those things. I think when we show up, it gives everybody else permission to show up. And I think that's the best gift that we can give one another, like honesty.
Yes, yes. And understand that we are dealing with, and I want to say this word loosely, dysfunction. Right?
Talk about that.
Because we are connected to cultures that has not learned that difference is greatness, or that difference means power, or that difference means increase, or that difference means better money, more decisions, a better way of engaging with your audience.
Exactly.
They haven't learned that difference means money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because now everybody's bringing who they are to the table. And I say dysfunction because the companies have narrated unity as sameness.
Exactly.
And unity is not sameness. Unity is us understanding and having the same values and beliefs about an intended end.
Right.
But I don't have to look like you to be unified with you.
Right. Wow.
And so we've created prototypes, organizational prototypes. My background is organizational leadership.
Right.
So we have these prototype narratives out of our unique individual perspectives, and we are projecting. So you have all of these people projecting their understanding of what a leader is, not necessarily what a real leader does, not necessarily the attributes, or we are connecting with societal norms, because the people who need to be in the leadership pipeline, we don't know them. So we can't even have a decent conversation about what it is that they do, or that we use mechanisms like 360s and things of that nature that don't take into consideration intersectionality, does not take into consideration bias, does not take into consideration that the person who is actually giving me this assessment is looking at me through biased lens.
Exactly.
They don't even have training on it. So their assumption is what they're looking and dealing with regards to me. You see me as angry. I'm not angry. I'm direct.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But you assess it as that because I'm not you.
Yeah.
Or I'm not what you're used to, or I'm not a part of your norm or your lifehood, right?
Exactly.
So you don't know what to do with me.
Right.
Because you haven't learned that narrative.
Which is so unfortunate, because again, my entire career is flashing in front of my eyes, and I can think of so many times where I remember having another boss. He wasn't even a boss. He was like a professional mentor. Some of the work that we was doing, he had done it for years, and so we had access to him just as a mentor.
Right.
And I never forget, he was like, Kwanza, you have to act like you don't know stuff sometimes.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
said, well, I'm never going to act like I don't know what I know. Like I
Right.
don't, I was like, I don't understand that,
Right.
but I think that's some of the misdirection
Mhm.
that when people don't know how to just accept me for who I am, because it seems like, with a white male, they don't have to jump through those hoops, those
Correct.
social hoops to be
Correct.
accepted. I mean, I've sat in meetings where a male, can cuss everybody out around the table
Hmm.
and nobody bats an eye.
Right.
If and I can raise my hand and say, well, wait a minute, did we think about this? And then some way, somehow that's offensive to the
Hmm.
room.
Yes.
And it's
Because
like,
they're trying to fit you into the
right,
attributes, characteristics, and narrative of a white leader, a white female middle class leader. And there's a whole lot
wow.
of social dynamics that go along with that. We haven't even talked about the
Ah,
social narrative with regards to how a white man looks at a white woman and her place in his life. We
right.
haven't even talked about industrialization. We haven't even touched
Ah,
on history. We haven't even touched on, think about this, in history, women were considered ignorant and stupid.
right.
I have read
Yeah,
research where women who were college graduates, when they got married, stopped working and no longer did what they used to do
right.
because society dictated that that's not what a married woman does. So we have
Exactly.
all of this history impacting who we are as women, these
Yeah,
people's narratives that they're bringing to the table. And no one knows how to challenge the conversation that you need to shift your lens, your identity lens, to
right.
give other people permission to be who they are and not look at me through the lens of your history.
Exactly. Exactly.
And see, that's why DEI is not training.
Exactly.
DEI is an identity shift.
Oh, I love that. So DEI is an identity shift. Help me
Because
to understand that.
I have to change in order to see you different.
Oh, that is really good. So
I have
DEI,
to
that's
change
good.
in order to see you different.
In
I don't
order
need
to
to
see
be
you different.
trained to see you
Right.
different. I have to change to see you different.
I love that.
Yeah, because my lens is based on what? My lived experience.
Exactly.
How I see you is based on what has happened in my life, my experience,
Exactly.
my trauma, my hurt, my miscommunication, culture, how I was raised. All of these things are identity.
Right.
My lens, my perspective, how I show up in spaces, how I view you, right? That's
Exactly.
me. That's me. So in order for me to see you as, oh, okay, so she's non-prototypical. Oh, I've been looking at her through this lens. Oh, wow. I have to change
Right.
and give
Wow.
myself permission to expand my capacity to see people as individuals and not as a monolith.
Yes. That is so, I've never, and it's crazy because I've supported at my last company, I was in charge of like our women's, we didn't have a DEI, but I
Right.
was in charge of our women's ERG.
Mm.
And I had not thought of diversity or DEI in that way. That is not training, but it is an identity shift, a change in that's brilliant
Hmm.
because it changes the approach, right?
Yes.
It changes the conversation
Yes.
that you're having around that. That is really, I mean, I had never heard it that way and certainly had never considered it in that way. So for, Black women showing up in the workspace, I know you said the best thing that they can do is be okay with who they are and show up as themselves. I want to ask this question. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it.
Yeah.
How do you get others to accept you as you are?
Is that the agenda?
That's what I was thinking.
How will people know how to shift and change if we are always conforming?
That's
When
true.
do people have the opportunity to see something different
Right.
if I become who it is that they
They
expect me
want me
to
to
be?
be. Yeah.
How do they get the opportunity to see something bigger and great if I am not in the space to be that. And I'm not saying that it is our responsibility, because I hear that a lot too.
Right.
It's always Black people's responsibility to help people do something different. I'm not asking you to take on that responsibility. I'm asking you to be yourself.
Right. And then I think be open to maybe the questions.
Correct.
So I think for me, one of the biggest career shifts, I guess, that I did was decide to go from being a relaxed, wear my hair relaxed to wearing it natural.
Okay.
That was like a mental thing for me as well. And I remember a couple of things. There was an older Black woman. I was changing companies, and I was had just interviewed to go to this other company, and my hair was natural, and I wore my hair natural. And I remember there was a Black woman that worked in our building, and she was a part of the cleaning staff. And she was like, why would you wear your hair like that? That's not professional. We were on an elevator, it was just the two of us. Right. And she began to tell me how unprofessional my hair was.
Okay.
And I was like, well, no, I like my hair like this. And so I think that's a part of it as well, is like you said, that cultural mindset with regards to natural hair. Or even like the way that we dress. I mean, there's so many areas where we choose to express ourselves. Like I was talking about earlier, the way that I dress is a form of expression for me.
Yes.
And is a way for me to show up my full self. But if I'm in like people that go to schools where you have to wear uniforms, you might get that person, I'm going to put a patch on mine just to make it a little different, or I'm going to wear some bright sneakers, or change my shoelace or something just to bring their self into this so I felt like that was a question that I had, but I guess just to talk a little bit about within ourselves overcoming that same kind of putting one another in a box, if that makes sense.
I think it's important and that's part of why I wanted to do the work around the curriculum and have women who are current and emerging experience the curriculum, because I believe once we understand what is going on,
right,
not just the experience of what's happening to us, not that I feel less than or that I feel that I'm wearing a mask, but to understand the narratives of what's going on with that, understanding the theory, understanding the research. I think when we have more information, it makes us more confident in the decisions that we're making about our show up and who we are. And we're willing to take more risk when it comes to being who we are and who we're called to be, because we have insight.
Exactly.
And I think that's the power, right? So then when you do go in the room and somebody says to you, why are you being so angry, or why are you being so aggressive? You can say quickly, because you understand what's going on. That is not being that. I am not angry. I am direct.
Right.
Can we have a conversation about the difference between angry and direct? Maybe there's an issue with language.
Exactly.
You might think that I'm just being direct. You see what I'm saying? But now we're controlling our narrative, even though we're in spaces that do not know how to handle us.
Exactly. I love that.
But I understand. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So too, the research shows us that a Black woman's identity attributes of leadership, listen here, Kwanza, are the exact same as white men's.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
There's only two differences between us and white men. We're nurturers and we're democratic. But all of the other attributes are the exact same as a white man's.
I knew you were going to say that. I don't know. It was years ago. I remember, I don't know what I was working on. I think maybe a school assignment or something, but I remember I didn't have the scientific, like the study or research behind it, but it's just like kind of doing just that, that assessment. It's like you kind of recognize it. So that, I think that's really interesting. But another thing that you were talking about is the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Oops. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I think a lot of times we are looking at imposter syndrome as a conversation around us doubting ourselves. But then we have to analyze, okay, I am successful, but I feel doubt. Is it that I am not the successful woman, or is there something else going on?
Okay.
And so I bring in neuroscience. I love neuroscience. I love stuff about the brain, right? So research shows us with regards to the brain that
Exactly.
when we are transitioning, when we are transforming, when we are becoming someone in our growth, we're still dealing with the narratives of who it is that we were. We're still dealing with the narratives of our identity as it pertains to who it is that we used to be. So that doubt or that unbelief are a part of who we were. So this is not a conversation about us not being this person. It is not a conversation about us not being the successful woman or us not being the greatest expression of ourselves. What is taking place is who it is that we were. There's still synaptic connections connected to who it is that we used to be. And so it is our brain pressing up against the narrative in our space, saying to us, do you really want to continue to go on that path? Because that's not who we are known to be. That's not what we have created with regards to our synaptic connections in the brain. So as soon as we understand that this is not a narrative of us no longer being who it is that we need to be, but really what it is, it's a conversation of what's going on in our brain as we release who we were in order to walk into who it is that we are and who it is that we're becoming, then that conversation around having imposter syndrome means something different. It makes us, really look into this narrative of how can we now not release where we're going, not release who we are, but then acknowledge that there's still some things that I need to deal with based on who I was, and begin to remove that through affirmations, through reflection, through casting down thoughts and imaginations that exalts itself against who we are and where we're going. So when we are able to do that, when we're able to gauge and understand, well, no, that's not really imposter syndrome. No, that's not really me doubting who I am. It's just what's going on in my brain as I am creating new synaptic connections with regards to who I am and me continuing to move forward. And so when, how people say it's the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, no, that's not what it is. It's just your brain saying, is that where you want to go? Is that really what you want to do? Because that's not who we've been. That's not how you've been living your life. That's not the pattern that you created in me. Come on.
Oh.
So as you continue to say, no, I'm going there, your brain will continue to release.
Yes.
Because in order for you to create new synaptic connections, the old synaptic connections have to die. Did you hear what I said, Kwanza? It has to die.
Yeah.
So before your brain kills who that was,
oh my gosh.
it has to give and ask the question, are we going there? Kwanza, are we going? Are we really going?
Exactly.
After I let this go, right? So that battle and that tussle that we feel about who we are and where we're against who we used to be is nothing more than a brain activity trying to make sure that that's what we want and that's where we're headed. So that's why I said we need to reevaluate that whole narrative of saying that I'm doubting myself. No, you're not doubting yourself. It's just who you were bumping up against who you are.
Exactly.
And sure, is that what you want? Okay, if that's what you want, when I let this go, we got to keep on moving forward.
Exactly. And it's so interesting because like I was saying, I'm going through like a career change. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that God has been, I guess, just putting on me for at least the past 3 years, maybe 4, is this use all your bricks to build. And I'm constantly going back to that because the way that I kind of see myself right now is I'm so compartmentalized. So much so that I've even labeled it. It's like, okay, Kwanza, this is what she does. Right. And then I, take on the persona of my middle name, Faleka, and she's the creative one. So I take on these different, parts of me and kind of identities. Yes. But I compartmentalize them as opposed to, and I was doing a session or a conversation a few months ago, and I literally was in tears because the young girl, she said, we were talking about creativity and being creative and how you show up in the workspace with your creative self.
Yes.
Because a lot of times when you're in corporate America, it's so rigid and it's,
Prototypical.
exactly. And when she said that, it just clicked for me.
Yes.
That no, I have to learn how to bring my entire self into
Yes.
every situation, because not only is the analytical part of me important, but the
Yes.
creative side of me is important as well. And
Yes.
bringing all that together just makes me a better everything. It makes me a better leader. It makes me a better follower. It makes me a
Mm.
better creative, it makes me better at everything.
It
It's
makes you
like,
more productive.
exactly. But when
Mhm.
you are compartmentalized, it's
Yeah.
like you're turning off parts of yourself. And so
Yeah.
that's why it was like, oh, I'm only showing up at, 7%. It's
Mhm.
because you've left all these other great qualities that are so important and so necessary. You
Yeah.
push that to the side.
Mhm.
So
And you
that,
conformed.
and you conform. It's like one of those things where, I would look at it, it's like, okay, well, I've been relatively successful. But then you get to this place where you realize, like, but this isn't it. This, because I fit myself into a box
Mhm.
because of what society says it should look like.
Right.
And then you can check the boxes and do the stuff, right? But then when you look at it and you're just not fulfilled.
Yes.
And now you go back at 51 years old and it's like, okay,
Bring
how
it
do
all
I bring
around.
it all together, right? And that
Mhm.
literally is where I am, which is why I think this conversation I feel like it's all these conversations a lot of times are for me personally,
Right. Right.
because there's so much for me to get out of it.
Right.
And you're right, even with the imposter syndrome, like reevaluating that,
Mhm.
which I love this conversation because there's so many things that we've heard that we typically think we understand,
Right.
but we're looking at it through this lens that's I don't want to say, I guess, incomplete.
Yeah, I think that's a good word. Or
Yeah.
yeah, or just not, or at a limited capacity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just which I mean, it answers so many, like I said, my career is literally flashing through my mind because
Yeah.
there's so many case in points. The things that you're saying, it's like my mind flashes. Remember that time? You'll
Mhm.
say something else, my mind flashes. Remember that. But
Yeah.
what I love about it though is that it's not too late to turn it around.
No, not at all.
And
Not
so,
at all.
can you talk a little bit about that? So, like, even for myself, I feel like I need to sign up for your services because I was literally just saying, like, I need, like, not necessarily a life coach or career coach. I'm like, I need a manager, like a brand kind of strategist,
Uh-huh.
looking at myself as the brand. Like, I
Mhm.
need someone to help me, you
Mm.
know, um,
Shape
um,
that.
yeah, it's like
Mhm.
I like, when you need something. I'm
Yes.
certainly not one. If I need it, I'm going to be out looking for it and try to
Yes.
connect with
I'm like that too.
what I
Mhm.
need.
Yeah, I
But
ain't got no shame. No shame in my game.
exactly, exactly. But can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about I guess maybe if there is like a case study that we can kind of look at, if there is a young woman right now, young, older, whatever, wherever she is in her career, and she's feeling that same kind of malaise that so many of us have felt, trying
Mhm.
to fit into this structure, whether it's a corporate structure or wherever else it is.
Right.
What would be a first step for them to kind of help to, I guess, connect with their identity, I guess?
Yeah, I think the first step that I introduce to people is self-awareness.
Mm.
And there is this word called metacognition,
Oh,
and it
wow.
means thinking about what you're thinking about.
And it's funny, I say that all the time. Think about what you're thinking about. But I didn't know that there was a fancy word for that.
There's a fancy word for it. It's called
Metacognition.
metacognition.
I love it.
Yes, thinking about what you're thinking about. And I think when we start doing that in all of our spaces and really slowing down, that's something else that we have to do as women, that self well being.
Uh,
Slow down enough so that you can pay attention to yourself.
yeah.
And think about what just happened. As soon as you had a reaction, right?
Yeah.
As soon as we start slowing down, you had a reaction of resistance. What was the resistance? The patterns that
Yeah.
your brain have created that has given you permission to not slow down. So your brain just in that moment
Yeah.
said to you, how you gonna do that?
How? Right? That literally is like, how?
Why?
But
Because the pattern of your brain says that you don't
exactly.
have permission to
And
do.
that's the thing, because I feel like that's a part of, that's why I asked the question about the Black girl magic, the strong
Mhm.
Black woman, because for me, I feel like with that, it gives like this connotation, and maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, that we take pride, it seems, in being booked and busy.
Mhm.
It's like we take pride in, juggling 50 million things and having 20 irons on the fire. Like it's almost like we take pride in that. And I feel like that the connotation comes from terms like the strong Black woman and, Black girl magic. And maybe it's me not being able to kind of shift that or separate the two, right? Separate the idea of I can show up as my whole self and,
Mhm.
and all of my magic and all of my glory, right?
Right.
Without adding more to myself than I can really stand, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I make the statement all the time when I do a series called The Superwoman. I actually teach
Mm,
about the Superwoman.
exactly.
And one of the statements I make with that conversation is we have been taught from little children
Right.
that love is self-neglect.
That
So
love is self-neglect.
if I neglect myself, it represents my love for you. If I do everything that you want
Oh,
to do, I love you. It is a sign. So I have to self neglect to show
wow.
my love.
Wow.
We've been taught that from our mothers. We've
Why
been
do
taught
I
that
why do I feel like I'm in therapy right now?
I get that a lot. Everywhere I go, they be like, I just had therapy. I
Yes.
even my copay. I was at a workshop this week I was doing. They was like, what's your copay? What's the
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we've
That
been
is
taught that
surreal.
self-neglect is love. If you don't do something for me and I choose to stay home and I can do it, I don't love them. Oh, I'm selfish. Why? Because we've been taught that spending ourselves is
Mm,
love. I am showing you. And think about this, going
Jesus.
back to identity, because I don't know who I am,
Right.
because our mothers and grandmothers did not know who they
They
were,
were.
they gave or they did in order to have purpose.
Yeah.
So their
Jesus.
identity became what they did. Their
Exactly.
identity became how they acted towards others. And the cost was self neglect.
Mm.
But
Woo.
the outcome they were trying to get was love.
Wow.
So they taught it to us because they didn't know how to tell us what purpose was. So our roles and responsibilities became our identity.
Yeah.
But if it can leave you, if it can change, it's not who you are. So
Exactly.
if you're a mom, your children will leave home. If you're a mom, your children might pass. Are you telling me that you're no longer who you are? If it can go, it is not who you are. It is a role and responsibility. And we have not learned to separate those things. If you're a married woman, you can get a divorce. Does that
Right.
mean that's who you are? No, that's not who I am. That's a role
Wow.
that I walk in as who I am.
Exactly.
You see what I'm
Uh,
saying? So
I,
once we begin to separate these pieces out and really do the work, beginning
right.
with
Wow.
self-awareness, why do I do that? Why did I say that? What does that mean? Is that my mama or is that me?
Yes.
Is that
Wow.
trauma or is that my real reaction?
Wow.
Do I want to keep that? Do I want to continue with that? Because in order to walk in your identity, you have to have truth, right?
Exactly.
What is my truth here? Is that me existing or
Wow.
is that me being intentional with who I am and how I'm showing up? Because when we're intentional and we understand our truth, we also understand the consequences of walking in that truth.
Exactly.
So we're not surprised. So when we come as we are on the job, we know what the consequence is for us.
Exactly.
And we know the consequence of doing our hair natural. Why? Because we've done the work.
Right. And it's so good because I remember talking with a young lady and we were talking, talking about school stuff and she, I met her at a conference, and one of the things I do when I go to conferences, I try to network and meet people. And I've been doing like what I call like virtual coffees, especially
Yeah.
if someone's like, she was all the way over in somewhere in I think maybe San Diego.
Yes.
And so we did like a virtual coffee.
Mm,
And she was like, so have you, like, she was like, so I want to tell you a little bit about myself so that you can understand my yeses and my nos.
mm,
And I thought that was just so, and she began to share with me, just a dynamic life, a dynamic story. You wouldn't have known it just by seeing her because she was just so bubbly and just, but she has this dynamic history, this
mm,
dynamic life story. And I thought that was so profound to say that to understand me, you'll
yeah.
understand my yes and my no's. But when we understand us, then
Yes.
it makes our yes and our no's a lot easier as well,
And it
right?
brings weight to them.
Exactly.
It brings value and worth to them.
Exactly.
And we're willing to fight for them because
Exactly.
we know who we are and why we've made the decision.
Exactly. Wow. This was such a packed, information packed conversation. And I
Yeah.
know I don't even want to look at the clock. I looked at it a little while ago, but I know time is getting away and I know you have a million things to do. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to share anything that you might have wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say, or any last minute words of wisdom that you want to drop on us.
My last words of wisdom is do the work.
Amen.
You are the gift.
Now you do have, I know you said you have a curriculum. Do you offer like coaching? Like how can someone, I mean, I'm sure I'll connect all your connection and stuff, but
Right.
do you have offerings like that, services that you offer?
Yeah, I do executive coaching. I have programs and services. We're doing a lot of revamping coming into the new year.
Right.
I'm just positioning in new and greater ways, but I do all of those things. My focus right now is also, like I said before, is on my dissertation work
Dissertation,
because I
yeah.
want to shift it and I want it to become one of the things that I do to empower current and emerging African American
I
women in
love it.
spaces. So whether it doesn't matter the organization, and also to me being an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16, right?
Wow.
So I even understand that narrative. So being able to bring this conversation, this portrait of a leader, this African American woman who shows up in all of her glory, right? Not only in these corporate and business spaces, but no matter what it is that you do, you have to know who you are. You have to
Exactly.
do that work. So that's my wisdom, my closing remarks. Do the work.
Do the work.
How do I begin, Stephanie? Self-awareness.
Amen.
Start being, looking, developing, being intentional and conscious about everything that's going on around you. Be, intentional about the resistance that you feel. Be
Mm.
mindful calling that the devil and assess, is that really something of the enemy, or is that some type of brain situation going on, because that resistance is representation of me being in a season of transition,
Wow.
a
Woo.
season of me renewing my mind according to Romans 12.
Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
word says cast down every imagination and thought. So we see there's
Yes.
a battle, there's a shift, right? The word tells us so plainly that, we are living and dying. He said, you are a living sacrifice. I
Yes.
am living and dying at the same time.
Ooh.
So a lot of the resistance and the battles and
Yes.
the shifting as we transition is not an activity of the enemy. It is you positioning
Woo.
yourself for what God has for you and what is to come.
Yes.
So do the work. Do the work.
I love it. I love it. Well, I will definitely be signing up because everything that you're saying, like I said, it could not have come for me at a
Mhm.
more appropriate time. I mean, I was up to about 2 o'clock this morning, mapping it out. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
writing everything, like you said, doing the work, doing that assessment.
Mhm.
Is who am I?
Yes.
How does God always show up for me? One of
Mhm.
the things I was wrestling with, and I was sharing with another young lady I think yesterday I went and had lunch with a young lady, and I was telling her, I was like, I was feeling a little frustrated.
Yeah.
And when I started, talking about why I was frustrated, is that very thing that you're talking about, is
Mhm.
that resistance on the inside, the what you know versus the what you're doing, kind of,
Yeah.
where they're just in disharmony.
Yes.
And so it's like once you start talking through it, okay, Kwanza, why do you not want to do, and then you're starting to write it
Mhm.
down, kind of
Yeah.
really pulling back those layers
Yes.
um of why you're thinking, why you're feeling, why you're acting, why you're responding,
Yes.
all of that. And it
Mhm.
brings you to a place of, okay, like you said, it wasn't the enemy trying to attack. it's like this internal struggle that you're having with yourself.
Yes.
And I was up to about 2:30 this morning, just like literally mapping that thing out. Okay,
Wow.
Kwanza. I mean, everything from like you know, my entrepreneurial endeavors, my business things, and you know, all these different things. I know I'm holding you longer.
No, it shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry.
You're fine. But all these different things, all these different parts of me,
Yes.
again, bringing it all together.
Mhm.
But so everything that you're saying, I'm like, it is just like, for me, it is right on. You
Awesome.
know, it is right on. So I'm going to, you know, I'm going to go back and listen to this and really take some notes and really kind of
Awesome.
do the work.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely going to reach out to you too. So,
No problem.
but thank you so much. I mean, I'm
You.
sure people pay a lot of money to get this kind of advice. So thank you so much for so graciously, you know, sharing and sharing yourself and your wisdom with, you know, our listening audience.
Thank you.
This has been a blessing, and hopefully people will really, you know, because it's so layered.
Mhm.
So
It is.
hopefully
It's a
people,
lot.
yeah. So hopefully people will get to that beginning place, do the
Yeah.
work, and kind of just build, and then also reach out to you to
Mhm.
get
I'm
some
here.
consistent
Yes,
to
I'm
get that
here.
consistent relationship. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys so much for joining us. I tell you this, these are the best conversations ever. I don't know what to tell you. So, but thank you
Love
guys
it.
so much for joining us. And until next time, blessings, guys.
Blessings.